Hello, my name's Ed Poole. I'm a member of the Green Party, and this month we have our national executive elections. Today I'm speaking to Ekua Bayunu and Kat Bristow, who are standing to be joint Equality and Diversity coordinators. Hiya.
Hello.
Why did you join the Green Party, and why do you think other people should?
So I joined in let's see, 2017, I think it was. At that time, I kind of became a bit disillusioned. It was early days into Corbyn, and I kind of was a bit disillusioned with the Labour Party of how much things were actually changing and improving in the party. So I had this great singular figure, Jeremy Corbyn, left wing, but I didn't feel like kind of the party was moving in that direction along with him, from what I saw inside the party. So I kind of became a bit disillusioned with that movement at that time. Uh, Looking back, that was probably the correct decision. But yeah, so I kind of I've always been really left wing and always believed in kind of doing the best for people. And at the top at the time, I didn't know much about the Green Party, but what I did see was Cleo Lake, who was the deputy mayor sorry, not deputy mayor, Lord Mayor in Bristol at the time. She was really like enthusiastic, like black woman, like first black woman as Lord Mayor, and um, she did things like taking down the Colston picture off of the wall of the mayor's Lord Mayor's office, and kind of talking a lot about kind of how do we kind of like sever these ties of how kind of we move on from Bristol, from all of these kind of where a lot of the money's come from, and kind of this history of slavery, and kind of how do we kind of have rep repertory justice out of that. I'm probably mispronouncing stuff. That's a bit of what that's just how I talk. Um, but yeah, I was really infused by that, and kind of she got me into the party. And then when I was in the party, um, I one of the first people I met was Carla Denyer, and she was at that time running as a councillor, and I was like, great, like someone that believes the right things, that really wants to make a difference. Um, and seeing obviously Carla's rise over the last years to an MP and all the great things she's doing in that role now. Um, and yeah, it's just kind of what the party needs, is this vision that looks at both um, both at the climate and how what do like what we need to do to kind of stop kind of the most vulnerable in our society to be impacted by that, and also all of the other vulnerable people in our society needs to happen to live like good lives. So that's kind of what got me into the party.
So I joined the party in 2022 and I came as a sitting councillor. I had been elected in 2021, a year later, because the 2020 elections were obviously cancelled due to COVID and lockdown. So I had actually been elected as a Labour councillor, and well done, Kat. I actually didn't see the writing on the wall under Corbyn. I mean, I understood the difficulties that we had at grassroots level compared to what the promise was with having such an authentic left-wing candidate at a leadership level. But I hadn't been involved in mainstream party politics at all. I hadn't actually really seen them as relevant. Um, I'd been always much more engaged at a community level and at a sort of political education level. Um, my politics are Pan-Africanist and Nkrumahist, and Nkrumah is yeah, a very solidly socialist, but very specific look at how socialism had impacted on the African continent. Um, so there wasn't a party that represented that at all when I first came into mainstream politics. So I was drawn in by that character and then had to deal with what the reality was. Because the reality is that the Labour Party under Starmer is what the Labour Party was. It was just hidden a lot more, and it was hidden because there were some great members who were doing amazing things, and I was able to work and join them. But when I became a councillor, it was a very, very peculiar experience. Like one of the first things that happened to me, the whip's an interesting concept, and it's one of the reasons that I'm very, very pro the Green Party's position on that, because one, the term is archaic. It comes from the abuse and oppression of women and the abuse and oppression of different nationalities, particularly those who are more melanated. And yeah, for any organization that keeps itself rooted to that past has to sort of bear the brunt of that problem, I think. So yeah, but the first time I got whipped or had the whip threatened to be taken off me was because I supported my residents on a campaign called Block the Block when the councillor who I'd replaced. So that was also, I was already under a cloud because Manchester, so I'm from Manchester, and Manchester is a very, very Labour run city. When I became a councillor, 94 out of 96 councillors were Labour. There was one Green and one Lib Dem. And it was very much a sort of dictatorship, really. And I didn't fit because my branch deselected the sitting councillor, which was seen as absolutely not what you do. And he also happened to be the deputy leader of the council, so it was definitely not what you do. So I came and supported my residents, and I was told that that was breaking an unwritten, unspoken rule, and that I should leave my politics behind me because they obviously knew. I know, it was the weirdest thing. Now I was a councillor, I should leave my politics behind me, which is, it's like you can't actually take the blood and soul and heart out of me, so that wasn't going to happen. So a year in, I knew things that just this wasn't working for me. I was getting to the point where I was actually embarrassed when I was door knocking all the time. Though I have to say, my Green Party colleagues didn't think Labour door knocked at all, but we did in my ward every week, twice a week we were out. And I was embarrassed. People go, yeah, I'm Labour. And I was like, I do not want to represent this party. This party doesn't represent my politics. It doesn't represent what I believe in and what I think is best for the community that I want to serve. And I don't think it's serving the community and the people well. So I knew that my time was limited with Labour. The choice, I have to say that I was, and I think it's a really important thing in terms of the role that we're standing for, I wasn't very convinced by Green because of that very surface look of it being very white, very middle class. It didn't feel like there was a place for me, and there weren't in Manchester. There wasn't a Cleo Lake to be inspired by. There weren't black, green. There'd been an amazing green candidate who I'd actually worked with in the community called Deka Nzerebi. And so I was aware of that, but it was like he was a sort of anomaly rather than represented the local Green Party. So I knew my time was up and I needed to move. And what I knew when I looked was the policies of the Green Party, the politics of the Green Party. One, they had completely influenced particularly the environmental policies of the Labour Party. I think that was very clear, especially like the New Green Deal, which Labour was sort of touting at that time under Corbyn. So from a political point of view, it seemed actually much more in line with where I was politically, because I could have just gone independent. The other side of me is that I'm not, I like to work collaboratively. I like to work in a collective. It makes much more sense to who I am politically for me to be a member of a political party if I'm within mainstream politics. And then the final conversation was just across the hills, going west to the coast is Liverpool and the Wirral. And just before I made the decision, a councillor there who I really admired decided to go into the Green Party. So I got on the phone and had a really long chat with her about why and the reasons, and yeah, decided that this was the right thing to do. I mean, there were some pluses with that, which it meant that by the time, so a year later, they had two councillors. So actually, it made us the opposition with three councillors, and then a year after that, we had four. So we were the official opposition. Um, so that felt really important. I mean, the phrase "being the green in the room" really resonated with me. You know, having such a small group but actually being able to speak out, because as a sort of one of hundreds of councillors, Labour, you've got no voice, especially with a cabinet model rather than a committee model. And it felt really important to be able to actually ask the questions, raise the motions, be able to I mean, I was a hardworking councillor already, and I became an incredibly hardworking councillor as a Green councillor because there was stuff to do in the town hall as well as stuff to do in my ward, and also there were communities who weren't being served, and it was though I was still very much alone as a councillor because the other councillors were down in Woodhouse Park and I was in Hume. And Hume already had it. I think it was the only other place in Manchester that had a Green councillor. So there was still a level support for the Green Party policies of people who were still there, who was still living in my ward. So that was really helpful as well. But yeah, that's why I moved over, because it felt like it was a party that actually represented where I stood politically.
Right. I think somebody should do like a collection of horror stories from the Labour Party. Like I was in the Labour Party for 5 years. I've got some horrific things that went on, um,
Mhm.
like really like horrendous stuff. Somebody should
Yeah.
should should make a book of like all the ex-Labour members' survival stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually think it might be quite useful. Something, I mean, I'm serious about it because it's really weird. I do get a little bit of low-level bullying within the Green Party as a former Labour member. They'll go, "Oh, you just think that because you're a Labour." And you're like, actually, look at what my history is within the Labour Party. Look at what I was fighting for and how I was oppositional to the things that, rather than it's very odd. It's a very odd position, and I do think more and more we need to address that because we have lots of former Labour councillors who are now with
Yeah.
us and former Labour members. And I would just like to sort of challenge that narrative. Also, by the time I came over, I was like, I mean, you can see the pictures actually because Carla came up the day we declared. And loads of people came in and we set a leaflet out. And I looked like this because was under so much pressure. Um, yeah, so it would be interesting to look at how to recover from the trauma of being in Labour.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think of the Green Party electoral strategy known as Target to Win?
I think there are many challenges to how Target to Win is applied. I think as a core strategy, there's kind of it's a good strategy, it's a winning strategy, but I think how it's applied in a lot of kind of local green at a local level in green parties can be quite discriminatory. So they they kind of like you can have any kind of policy and any kind of strategy or policy can be used for discrimination by the people applying it. So kind of the kind of the challenge is like there's a belief that like Greens can only win in white areas and middle class areas. That we um kind of shouldn't broaden our reach out to like disabled people, and also how Target to Win is applied with kind of candidates as well with like disabled people. I was a candidate in Bristol last year for one of the council seats, and I found it really hard kind of the expectations put on me because I'm disabled. I'm a wheelchair user. I can't get around as much as kind of able-bodied people can, and kind of I have low energy a lot of the time. So kind of those expectations put on someone, and it kind of the kind of even in a press party like Bristol, kind of there isn't a recognition of kind of the support people need and the the kind of other things you can be doing as a candidate of then kind of knocking on doors and leafleting. Like there's so many other things that you can be like there's multiple ways to win a campaign, but and so kind of there needs to be more recognition of that and what individual people can bring to a campaign other than kind of the door knocking and the leaflets. Not that that's important, that's incredibly important, but doesn't necessarily need to be the candidate to be doing those things. Other people can also be doing those things, and the party can offer support and help with that. And then kind of the selection award, which is the first thing I touched on, of ADHD, so I do skip around a little bit. Kind of the yeah, so there needs to be kind of I've thought many times there needs to be a version 2.0 of the Target to Win that kind of gives examples of how to kind of apply it and you know kind of for example Muffin and his election kind of just built his campaign from the grassroots level. And we need to kind of look at also when we're selecting wards, also like the candidates that we could have for those wards and kind of the things that they can bring to that and how in touch with their communities are, which isn't Target to Win, but it's often the kind of afterthought because you know, the selection process should be members led after you select a ward, but you can also look at the candidates that you would have for that ward. You can be like, oh, who's interested in running in these wards? And then if you have a candidate which has kind of a more unique election strategy, also thinking in Bristol as well, in Annie Stafford's kind of election, it's really a lot of blocks of flats, no letterboxes, you have to kind of buzz in. So they did a lot of like they took up like billboards and stuff in the city centre, which is where their ward is. And kind of they last time they won both seats, time before that they won one seat. So kind of we can do other things than what is written in the book, and kind of the skills people bring, we need to kind of recognize those, and we need to get people out of the, you know, we need to get people to understand like a lot of people will agree and want to vote for kind of Greens and Greens policies. It's just we need to get out the habit of being like the environmentally conscious people are the people that are white and middle class, and that we don't have a lot of other policies that we can present to people and a lot of other kind of support. So yeah, it's kind of more like Target to Win is a good strategy. It needs to be developed a little bit more, and kind of we need to the party needs to kind of more recognize the problems of it, because there's a lot of people now just like throw the whole thing out, which I don't think is the right approach. But like we need to kind of develop it more and kind of have that, like I think one thing is kind of a Target to Win 2.0 kind of approach to writing it, and also training to local parties, and kind of because also reading the entire booklet isn't for everyone. It's for me. I like devouring things and reading things, but it's not for everyone. And kind of kind of the ways that we can use Target to Win, I think, is something we need to kind of develop and kind of listen to people that have had negative experiences of target to win, and you know have that, because of target selection, because of candidate selection, whatever, we need to kind of look at that and be like, what are the problems here and how do we develop that? And I don't think that's kind of being done at the moment. And I think this is something me and Akira can kind of bring to the role, and kind of listen to people and kind of make those connections between communities and the people developing the strategies. But yeah, that's me.
So I obviously came in already elected, and then devoured, I guess, Target to Win. I have two manuals, the most updated version, and I also went on training. I went on straightforward Target to Win training, and then I forced my way into something called Scale Up for Success, which is where I think places like Bristol would be within that sort of training, which is looking at how to take on board some more of the nuances in expanding how Target to Win is delivered. And one of the issues that I feel we have as a party that is really on the cusp of growth. I mean, we've been through this growth, and Target to Win has been the very successful strategy that has underpinned the growth that we've got to, I would say, up to about 2 years ago. What that actually really means, though, is it's a strategy that was written for and by the white middle class majority and the white middle class Southern majority. Let me be really accurate within that. And predominantly, I mean, obviously London's down there in the south, and Bristol are the cities, but it has quite it feels like it's been built around that more rural audience that maybe the Greens have always thought are their strong areas. Now, that's nothing wrong with that. And the whole point of it was to get political power. However, the problem with having a strategy like that in place is that no sort of flexibility or reflective practice was built into it. So the world has shifted hugely. The world we're operating in, I think, is almost unrecognizable. The opportunity for a more diverse Green membership is way beyond, I think, anything that Target to Win has to offer. And I think that it's more the fact that there wasn't anything that was built in that said pause, reflect, consider. And I think those are the things that I feel that have what that does to people who've seen its success elsewhere. So in Manchester, its success, I think it took about 2 or 3 years of applying Target to Win religiously, like literally word for word, to get the first councillor, second councillor, third councillor. And I came in between the second just being elected and the third. And there was a sort of like absolute tunnel vision on delivering this. And I came in on a promise going, guys, I'm coming, I'm joining you. One of the things I'm going to be focusing on is how to make this party more representative of the city that we represent. How we can, and I was, wanting to work through the process, working with them, going to strategy days, looking at, the things that were on paper, because actually there were things that weren't applied. I'm saying it was applied religiously, but then there was the sort of, because there is a reflection built into the sort of selection process. Like after strategy day, there should be a period of time where you look at if you've got the right candidate, are you moving in the direction? Those sorts of things weren't done. It was a much less reflective process. And I was waiting for them, going, right, I've been working with this, I can see with it. And then a genocide started happening in Gaza. And one of the things that really made me realize that we need to really look about who we are as a party and what our responsibility is to the world, to the UK, to England and Wales, but and to our communities is I was literally told when I was saying we need to get out on the protest, we need to be front and center of this. This is really important, and it's in line. It's embedded in our policies. I was literally told that that's not what a political party is for. A political party, the Green Party, the local party, is for winning seats, not campaigning on issues. And your brain, we laugh at me being told I had to leave my politics behind when I became a councillor, but being told I had to leave my activism behind as a Green Party councillor was just insane. And that shifted. I mean, that has not been the reality. Greens for Palestine. I think we're seeing Green people out on sort of anti-austerity stuff. I think the activism that comes with particularly the rising socialist members. Because what I do recognise is the Labour Party was offered as a broad church and wasn't. The Green Party is still a broad church, shifting its membership, perhaps shifting more to the left. But let's be real, where there is still a bit of a battle for this heart and soul of this party. Are we staying on a more sort of small C conservatives? Actually, we say there is no environmental justice without social justice, but we don't really mean it because, actually we've got to save the planet first, rather than actually we need to get everybody involved in the Green Party saving the planet, else we haven't got a chance. We can't save the world. I'm sorry. White middle class people cannot save the world. We all need to be involved in saving the world, whether disabled or age, gender, cultural background, religion. We have to come collectively together. And therefore, we need to look at how we create an opportunity for everybody to participate in that. And therefore, we have to look at social justice. It's not a let's be kind by being social justice. Actually, it's the only way we're going to do this is actually tackling social justice so that we're all here on the front line fighting for the planet. And I think what happened is you had members who had been working very hard without target to win and not getting anywhere. Then they got target to win and they were getting somewhere. And then nothing was written as what happens when you succeed? What do you do with that political power? What do you do with a rising membership? It was like they were stuck going, we need to deliver target to win, we need to deliver target to win, rather than how do we actually embrace that success? How do we move it forward? How do we develop as a party? So I think that's my feelings about target to win, is that it's not even a target to win point two. Maybe it is, but I think it's because even the language of it, I guess, maybe needs to be challenged. It's how do we acknowledge who we are, what our success is, and what our responsibility is now in embracing a larger, wider membership base and making sure, because one of the problems with that is that that enthusiasm you were talking about with people come in, it's not a vehicle for really harnessing that enthusiasm. It is a bit of a computer says no type strategy, and that doesn't work for human beings. So that's what I feel about our electoral strategy, Ed. I think that we need to have a look at it, see how it's been successful, and then see what do we need for now. And also, therefore, the people writing it will be the people now. It will be the more diverse population. It will be more working class people, more people from global majority backgrounds, more people from different religious backgrounds, more people from the north. Yeah, and that will make a difference and it will strengthen it.
Also in Bristol, we have been talking about we have target to win, but we have almost half of the council seats. So kind of we need a target to hold as well. And what do we do once we're in power, and how do we keep those seats? And also target to win is also all about local issues, but on the doorstep in Bristol, and I'm sure it's the same in Manchester, you get a lot of people asking, what's your position on Palestine? Are you against this genocide? And that kind of messaging also cut through in Bristol as well. We put out kind of leaflets saying what our position is, that we're against genocide, and kind of that cuts through as well. So it isn't only about local issues, and kind of yeah, I agree. I think the core of target to win, personally, I think the core of target to win is good. It's just it needs to be expanded, and how do we kind of we shouldn't throw the whole thing out, but we should change it for the changing party and kind of the future.
How do we make a bigger impact in the media?
Because I think it's an excellent question, because how much of that is under our control if we're talking about mainstream media? I mean, I think we can look at what's happening currently in terms of the leadership election in particular seems to have grabbed more media time than I was anticipating it having. And that's really important. And we, one of the things I think we need to do is that I've watched is that we are, as an organization, quite we, we think through, we have the policies, we talk it through, but we don't have that speed. We don't have a system within the party to speedily respond to. So that I think, for instance, we've got special interest groups or the liberation groups who will have specialist knowledge. We don't necessarily have a way of funneling that specialist knowledge in through to the leadership so that they have our knowledge at their fingertips to be able to speak really quickly, very accurately on our policy and our position. We also, I mean, we're talking about mainstream media. We have a mainstream media that I think has deliberately got itself behind the rise of reform. And what do we do with a mainstream media that's actually supporting fascism in our country? I'm a bit of a believer in looking to history and see how that happens in, how has it happened in other countries, that you can grab the narrative. We need to have leaders. So there's a whole process that we have, like say our spokesperson process, that just feels like it hasn't been given the same robust sort of review in terms of who are our spokespeople, how are they elected, how are they selected, what is their strength, how, what do we need, how do we, so that's that whole information exchange, and then people who can speak well in front of a camera. And we have different strengths. There are people who are very good at being reflective and be able to write really good articles who aren't necessarily as good at standing up in front of a camera. Let's respect both those skills and use them more effectively. I think some of our internal structures aren't helping us. I think they're slow. They are a little bit. I think that it's similar to what I was saying to Target to Win, is that they haven't grown to accept where we are now as a party, with the number of councillors we've got, with the number of MPs we've got, and actually look at what are the processes that we need within the party. So you've spoken, Kat, about the processes to ensure people to be candidates, but also what are the processes to ensure that people who speak on our behalf also come from that range of backgrounds and range of experiences, and that there's the sound and how they speak to the electorate actually appeals to everybody. But I will say that I think we have been really handicapped by a biased media that has, we watch the amount of time when we had way more seats than Reform and how much more airtime they're given. And people, I don't actually get it. Obviously, I don't see any of this supposed charm that Farage has. Where is it? I've never spotted it personally. But the media can also do this thing where it fakes who personalities are. Like, they fake a narrative about, and you need to have people who can break through that. And I think we just need to be able to support and program them more and place them and give them more of a responsibility to be responsible to us and our policies. I don't feel that happens currently with our spokesperson process.
We do need to kind of be bolder in our messaging and be less afraid of kind of, negative things being published about us. Like we should get things published about us, hopefully positively, even if we're criticized for our policies and we're talking about them, at least people are hearing it. At the moment, we're too afraid of kind of being, saying what we believe out loud, kind of, and we need to be better at that and be like, yes, we will get criticism for it, but at least people will hear those messages. I think kind of also on kind of the point of the kind of liberation groups, we do kind of need to level, like what we can do in our role is kind of level up those liberation groups and making sure they do have the resources, they are able to get in contact with the comms team and feed on in messages. So our messaging is on point for when issues on those communities come up. Like I would love when, when something happens about trans rights, that trans people are saying, these are the issues that are important, these are the talking points you need to make. Same for disabled people. We've just had the whole universal PIP stuff going on, and I'm on universal and PIPs, universal credit and PIP, so like I survive on that money. So kind of we need to be able to kind of have those voices kind of feed into our messaging, and also kind of platform people from those communities inside the Green Party. If that can be like councillors and what they're doing, and like disabled councillor, what they're doing and kind of what they think, like great, and that's what we should be platforming those people. It also gives like view time to like local issues, and we do need to also kind of celebrate what we're doing on a local level and like what Greens are delivering for people, so people see that and are like, oh, the Green Party's doing this and this and this. Kind of people aren't hearing what we're doing, what we believe in. We need to be louder, and we need to get those messages across to people.
How do we attract more people who aren't white to be members and voters of the Green Party?
There are some basic things. Obviously, having more people from global majority backgrounds in positions of leadership will always help. It's a little bit of the bait on the hook. Making sure that those are authentic positions, though, not just sort of just. One of the things that I've always found really difficult in mainstream politics is that there seems to be a sort of separation of Black people from their politics. So like you can't actually have a conversation. It's like, as long as it's a Black person, and that just doesn't work. I think we can see that in terms of the world, and getting people to feel more comfortable and more confident about being able to question how, what are the politics and what's the difference? Is there a difference in terms of how socialism might present itself? I mean, I'm a socialist, so I'm going to be wanting more Black socialists rather than just Black people in the Green Party, and Black socialists who support our policies and our positions in terms of the environment and society. But I think that a starting point is actually, I did this when I was in what was then Greens of Colour, and I got as many people as possible to buy our badges, and then try and recruit 10 members to actually wear those badges in their local parties. Because actually having the debate, having people there in the first place is really important, but to have a conversation and engagement with, rather than one of the things that will happen is, well, we want Black people, brown people, whatever term you want to use, I use global majority, who just look like that, but are just like us. And actually being willing to go, we will expand and we will change and grow. So there's some internal work that needs to happen among the membership of understanding why are we even asking that question? Why do we need those people? And it's, and it's not about whether you're a good person or a bad person. It's, as I said at the beginning, it's the only way to affect the change. And I think if you start at that point, it's a mind thing, that we're not looking to expand and change and have more working class people and more Black people because we're nice people. We're doing it because it's the most effective, it's the only effective way to actually push for change in the world. So if you come from that starting point, rather than a sort of philanthropic kind, we're going to give a little bit of power to some people, because what happens with that when you do that is that you shut down the opportunity that they might have to have ideas and bring other people alongside them. And so what you will then get is you get the ricochet, and it does happen in the Green Party, where people come in and they're not treated well. They're not engaged. They're not holistically embraced. Their ideas aren't embraced. And they become very disenfranchised and disillusioned with the party. And then the message they put out there is don't bother. Don't bother with the Green Party. It's just full of white people who aren't going to listen to you and aren't going to respect your position or your point of view. So I think there's a lot of internal work, but that internal work can be done with love and generosity and kindness. It doesn't mean a sort of a stick that beats people. And I think what we have, it comes out of the society as a whole, but it's present within our party, which is being wrong is like, or making a mistake, particularly around things like race, disability, gender, is some sort of impossible to recover from position. And that is not going to move human beings forward. We need to be able to embrace that we come fully intact from the society we're in. So we come with racism, disableism, gender critical views. And how do we embrace that? How do we have that conversation? Because I think the ground is fertile for people who are in the Green Party. It's just they haven't been given an opportunity to explore why, because it's just not, why is this why is this important to do to meet the goals and ambition you already have, which is to see an environmentally just world and a safe world. So I think we need to do some of that internal work. And then we need to, in order to do that effectively, we need to have people who will attract people in. And then when they come, we need to be able to go, now we're going to learn, not now we're going to teach them how to be green. So that would be, it's a mindset. But I think there are things that we can put in place to really support that we don't have. I mean, the party's actually been in complete disarray around our equalities and diversity stuff. We've had no Equality and Diversity Coordinator. We've had no EEDI officer. We've had nobody at a leadership level. It's like those are roles who are going to do it. Actually, one of the things I think we will really need to do is to actually encourage this party to see that it's everybody's responsibility. You can't just go, we're going to recruit a Black person and then they're going to do the diverse matters report. They'll implement it. That is not the way it's going to work. Each of us has to see that it's our responsibility, and some of that will start inside us.
We put too much of the focus on like improving the party for Black people, for LGBT plus people, for disabled people on those communities, and there's not enough work being done by everyone else. So people get burnt out and then leave the party because they don't feel supported. They feel like all of this work and pressure's been put on them, rather than being like, everyone needs to kind of take responsibility on this and move the party forwards. I think our vision for the party is that as E&D coordinators, we would be kind of leading that, but we would be putting strategies in place so everyone is doing that work, not just us. Everyone in the party is kind of doing the work. Our leaders, the rest of GPECs, local parties, everyone is kind of doing that work and pushing us forwards, and it isn't just on one person to lead that.
Though I do think that there needs to be, within that though, there needs to be some greater evidence and emphasis on the role of E&D officers at local party level, and some coordination to support those people, that they come together and they are supported and can share ideas, because we don't have any of that. It's like, it should be a mandatory position that we should be checking in with all local parties. Where's your E&D officer? How are they doing? What support do they need? What support are you giving them? Yeah. So there are some structural things that we can put in place.
How can the Green Party assure disabled people that we're listening to them?
As a disabled person, I think at a basic level that the party isn't listening to disabled people, because disabled people can't get involved in the meetings. Like, there's a big accessibility problem, especially with local parties and like the venues they hire, and like there's no wheelchair access, or like the acoustics are so loud that anyone with kind of like any autistic people will just like walk out the door because it's just too like this sensory issues are too much. We need to, and also like I'm going to say like at conferences and stuff where in the past we've asked like the conference team has asked people like, is there anyone that needs sign language support at conference? And it shouldn't be on someone to ask for that for the party to put it into place. It should be, this is what's already provided, and you we include you, like relying on people to ask for things rather than providing them in the first instance is not inclusion. It's not kind of, it's not a way that disabled people should be, should have to live, is by asking for stuff all the time. I think that kind of the also kind of like at conferences, I found at conferences I've been to a global majority Greens meeting, formerly Greens of Colour, that and a conference meeting where the door wasn't wide enough to get my wheelchair through, so I had to fold up my wheelchair and kind of hobble through the door, which isn't really a dignified way that I should be interacting with conference. Also, a lot of conferences I can't even get to the stage. Like if I want to get in on this, like last conference, if I had to get on stage around, like I had to go around the back and to like out to Narnia to get to the stage, because it's like, I can't just wheel up to the front of the stage and get on there. I have to go around the back and try to find my way around that. And like, if if I'm proposing motions, like that, it shouldn't be an issue. Like people getting to stage, I know like that conference, Cade Hatton, who's also running for EAD, had a problem there. And like we should be setting up our events. We should be setting up our party for candidates as well. I've said before, we need to provide support for candidates. The party should have a pool of funds available for disabled people for the kind of adjustments they need to be candidates as well. And yeah, the party kind of needs to just be like accessibility is kind of built into the party. It isn't something people need to ask for. It's not something that disabled people are expected to do. Also, I want to all meetings in the Green Party to be hybrid, local party, regional party, whatever. Like, not everyone can come to physical meetings, and that's a reasonable adjustment. It's not too hard to set up a conference link in a room. So we need to do that to get disabled people involved in the first place. And then I guess the second part also I want to briefly talk about is also our policies. Some of our policies were not made for disabled people in mind. So there are quite a few problematic policies in the party where it doesn't recognize disabled people in what the party wants to do. And some people also propose policies that don't have disabled people in mind. I know a few years back a motion was brought about carbon credits, where personal carbon credits, where people would have carbon credits to spend on the environmental impact, and it didn't take into consideration like disabled people and like I need to charge my wheelchair and stuff like that. So, I use more carbon just by living and moving around in the world. So kind of our policies need to, and I think the disability policy working group is doing fantastic work on this. They passed a set of policies for disabled people last time, and now they're looking at other policies and how now they can have for inclusion for disabled people. I also think we need to do that for other groups as well. People from the global majority, queer people, everyone. We shouldn't just have a policy section which is this is our disabled person policy, this is our global majority policy. No, we can have that, but we should also need to have those issues baked in, and this is also a job that we can bring our liberation groups into and kind of outsource them into as well, so they have these, so they're able to kind of at the moment policy worker groups can't liberation groups can't raise policy at conference like policy working groups can do. They can only do them as individuals, and I know a motion's coming to next conference to address that, but kind of we need to be able to have people that are, we need to be able to have kind of our policies having equality, diversity, inclusion. I would say liberation is the most important point in our policies, and not just being an afterthought.
How should we handle transphobia in the Green Party?
I think there's a lot of people that are kind of having a go at our disciplinary system for kind of decisions being made. First of all, and while there are issues with our disciplinary system, i.e. how long it takes, how hard is it to actually file a complaint against someone. The complaints process at the moment is a lot of, you need to go through what someone's done. You have to show where in the kind of code of conduct does that breach, and how they breached that part of the code of conduct. It's a long, really long process. So I think we need to kind of overhaul our complaint system first of all, foremost, and kind of for when people are being abusive to kind of trans people, that is, and also other I don't want to focus on trans people. I want to say there's a lot of racism and ableism and other kind of isms in the party. I wish there wasn't, but there is. Greens, a lot of Greens are great, but there are we don't do any favors to say that we don't have these issues in the party, and they need to be addressed. And when people have kind of stepped over the line, that process is easy. That process also kind of is fair for both. Is fair for the person being complained about as well. So it is easy to engage. I've had complaints against me in the party. There was a moment where I had 10 different complaints against me because I'm trans. And I hadn't done anything, but because I'm trans, people wanted to weaponize the complaints process against me. I could talk more about that, but there's also was a legal case I was involved in against the party, so I won't go into too much detail about that issue. But yeah, so the complaints process does need to be tightened up. It does need to kind of be easier for people to submit complaints, and it also needs to be more fair on the people that's being complained against. And I don't want to see people that are on no fault suspensions for years at some points. I want these determinations to be made earlier. So kind of the other point in this, I think that we also need to kind of, I don't want to say educate, but kind of have conscious raising in the party about kind of trans people and kind of the issues we face, and kind of making sure that kind of like we are combating these narratives that women's rights and trans rights are at odds, because they're very much not. Like, these battles we should be fighting together. Also, while talking about the complaints process, I want to be clear that I don't want to kind of throw everyone that may kind of identify as gender critical out of the party. I think that some people, not that I agree with that stance, it's that I think there's some people that kind of use that label and are like, I've been kind of taken in, people that kind of been taken in by kind of these narratives, and they're like, oh, gender critical is like women's rights, when it's not. It's a lot more about it also, like, it has the problematic narratives of trans people at its core. So kind of we need to kind of bring people back from that and be like, and kind of listen and kind of not debate. I don't like debating my rights, but like kind of listening, kind of explaining and trying to bring people back from that. Like, there is, like, I don't think all gender criticals are kind of J.K. Rowling levels of transphobia, where their whole deal is they spout transphobic nonsense 24/7, and they don't kind of engage with anything. I think we can, like, I've known people that have identified as gender critical, and then I've talked to them about, you know, trans issues, and kind of like talk to them, have conversations like about bathrooms, about prisons and whatever. And I've explained like what, you know, what trans people's actual positions on these things are like with prisons, like inherently abusive, and there's like there is so much like abuse and sexual abuse as well that goes on in prisons, both from other prisoners and also prison guards. Like, male prison guards in women's prison is a major problem with kind of those kind of assaults, and you know trans people aren't inherently more dangerous, but there are trans people that are, you know, that have done horrific crimes, and like if someone has done sexual assault or something like that, I don't think they should be in kind of the general prison population. They should kind of be, you know, there needs to, like, they should be kind of separated from the general prison population and kind of have kind of more of a kind of eye on them. But not that I kind of agree with how prisons are set up. It's like I'm very much, we should have more of a we should like restore people to kind of living in society. And when you explain, like, you know, I don't want abusers to abuse in prisons, I just want, you know, the same rights as everyone else. Those kind of messages kind of bring people back from those kind of extremist views, because I have done a lot of research in like kind of radicalization pipelines and how people kind of are radicalized along these lines. And it's when people are kind of, they're not like they don't feel safe in society and they blame a marginalized group. What people tell them to blame a marginalized group, and kind of exposure to that group and being able to kind of have these conversations where you're kind of explaining to people about these things and kind of bringing people back from those positions. Like my goal in the role is kind of to have people like not throw people out of the party. I don't like it when people are thrown out of the party. I want people to kind of be brought in and to be able to like campaign on all of our issues on human rights, on the environment, and and have that common ground. It's just when it steps over from being from kind of those positions into kind of abusive, threatening behavior to trans people that we really need to kind of step up. And also we shouldn't be in a situation where kind of like our spokespeople are saying something completely different to policy. Like we have trans rights policy, we need to, as a party, we need to kind of put those policies across. We can't step back. We can't have people saying, their personal views over party policy. And that's kind of really important. So yes, we need to kind of three things. We need to wrap up quickly to summarize. We need to bring people back and kind of address what their views are and show them that trans rights and women's rights are very much hand in hand, are a fight together and not at odds at each other. We need to, when abuse does happen in the party, we need to deal with that with a complaints process. And lastly, we need to make sure that we are campaigning on our policies and be firm on trans rights when we're presenting our policies to people.
Because there is another process within the Green Party that I think we haven't spoken about, which is the ADRC, the Alternative Disputes Resolution Committee process, which is closer to a mediation process. One of the gaps I think that we have, because it's very hard to be asked to go into a mediation process with somebody you feel has abused you. It's a very, very difficult ask. And one of the issues around that is I think we haven't got in place. I know you said it's not around education, but I do think that we haven't got safe spaces for a dialogue around this. I'm 64 very soon, and so I feel like a conversation around where trans rights. So for me, trans rights exist very much within my global sense as a socialist around equality and the opportunity of everyone to contribute. But the language and the specifics of it and the knowledge of it is much more recent in terms of my political, life on this planet. And I think there needs to be some time and opportunity for us to have safe spaces to talk to each other. Because I think what is happening is it's being isolated in the same way that racism can be isolated. Whereas actually, and we've spoken about this quite a bit, Kat, haven't we, around the intersection of oppression. And actually, it's quite important to look at a conversation around class and race and disability, and that the conversation around oppression around people who are trans needs to fit in that holistically, so that we can find those common grounds, that we can find some of the more. So I have the language around fighting racism. It's embedded in me. The language around tackling transphobia isn't. And there's a real opportunity to share across those oppressions around, how do we address that? What does that actually feel like? So that I'm not trans. I recognize the privilege of, I think it is a privilege because we're in a world that oppresses, of being cisgendered. Um, at the same time, as a black person, I recognize the oppression I face as a black person, but I also love the privilege of being black. So, I recognize there's a two sides to this, and just having a more human opportunity. And one of the things that I asked for when I first came in, and there was some conflict around me having these conversations within my local party, was some investment in conflict resolution, which is very different to mediation. And it actually it's like about recognizing that people can be very triggered by the languages that we're using and can feel very like boxed, bits of our identity boxed off, and rather than being dealt with holistically. So I do think if we could find some way of working together to create safe spaces for dialogue, as a standard before anything happens. I think this idea that we wait for a transphobic thing to happen and then we go in a disciplinary process is the wrong way round. There should be a conversation around the policies that we have around um, oppressive practice from the get-go. It should be embedded into being a member. There should be, oh, you've been a member for 3 months and you haven't gone to have this conversation. Oh, well, we need to make sure you do. And rather than, it's sort of, I think particularly around transphobia, it's like, oh, it's a very difficult subject and we can't really address it, and it's very nuanced. And actually it's not. It's about how do we welcome people. It's about a group of people who have the right to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in the struggle. And how do we create the space for that to happen? And how do we find the things inside ourselves that feel threatened around that? I mean, I can give an example. I am awful. Can I have a conversation? I'm awful at pronouns. I am the worst person ever. And that is because my world for at least 45 years was very binary, very, very binary. And as many people will be, and it's not just an age thing, because I know there are older people who are much better at it and young people is just as bad as me. But how do we actually go, this isn't a signal that I don't have allyship. It's a signal that my brain needs rewiring and I need a little bit more time. And it doesn't mean that I don't care for you and I don't want to support you. And actually, please look at the actions that I take rather than the mistake that I make. So there's a lot of that I think we could get through, which because I think what we have is a society that's very blame driven. And so as soon as anybody makes a mistake, they feel so they think, well, I might as well just go hard for it. I'm just, I can't cope with this. I'm going to actually become gender critical because it's much easier than coping with, being told off every so often for getting a pronoun wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's like we sometimes just don't have the analysis of human beings. And I think it's something I'd really like to see us bringing into the work we do in terms of equality and diversity, that it starts with who we are as human beings, how we respond to being taken gently on a journey, even when we recognize, because I'm telling you, one thing Black people can bring to this is we sit with oppressive, phobic. It's really interesting using the word phobia, isn't it? It's sort of like, arachnophobia, whatever. We don't use it in other with other types of oppression. Behaviors, but it's about sparking off irrational fears. That's why we use the word phobia. But the thing is, they're real inside those people's minds. So how do we take people on that journey with us without putting the burden just on trans people, because they're already having to deal with being oppressed, with not having their identity recognized, with being actually abused because of their identity. So how do we all come together recognizing the difficulties it has as us as human beings who've lived through oppressive practice? How do we change that? How do we come together? And I'd like us to look at investing in some of that. So whether it's investing more in ADRC, investing in conflict resolution, education, which is, I understand why you might feel a bit weird about that word cat, but for me, education is a wonderful thing. It encompasses all sorts.
How important is social and economic class in politics?
So important. I think it's the majority of people are are from working class backgrounds and are economically challenged. That is, yeah, we know that. So if we don't address how that impacts on their day-to-day interactions with the world, and therefore their day-to-day interactions within the political party, then we have no chance at all of creating equitable spaces where everybody can contribute, where the majority can contribute. And I think that is, it's it's a very it's a really important discussion that isn't necessarily well addressed in any of the environments that I work in. So I'm active, obviously I'm in the Green Party, I'm also an activist within housing and with health. And I feel like class is not, it's one of the most performative areas. It's like, oh, you're working class, and you can be a working class if you've got a particular accent, or you live in a particular type of house, or you have a particular set of views. And it is, I think that is particularly isolating for people from different cultural backgrounds. So it's really weird. Often when people talk about working class people, I find what they really mean is white working class. And we need to absolutely go, no, we need to address there are nuanced differences, perhaps because of experience of migration, because of experience of racism. But I think class is probably if there's an intersection that we need to address on, because mostly there will be, it's like people will be working class and women, people will be working class and northern, people will be working class and black, and people will be working class and disabled. And so it's a really important bedrock for us to address. I think if we don't to start and really addressing it, what does that actually mean? How do we work in solidarity, coming from a society that has said middle class people with a particular type of education within a particular system are better suited to lead. And we keep duplicating the systems within which those people thrive. And therefore we keep giving ourselves the evidence that yes, actually it's middle class people and they do this and they do that better. And then when there is an attempt to address that, some of that is so simplified. Like I've had conversations like, well, we meet in pubs because that's where working class people meet. Well, it's never been particularly safe spaces for women, and it's not going to be great places for Muslims to meet in, and they're all working class too. So let's just be a little bit less simplistic around how we address class and have the same level of debate that we have around anything else. And I think that's what's missing, is that there is sort of shorthand ways of describing class that just don't serve us well. But I think it's, if we don't understand that it is people with a lived experience of being working class that have to be leading us through this. That's I think is the biggest issue with any of these oppression, is you have to have people with lived experience of that, who are using that lived experience though for the common good, because not everybody does. And I think that's really important for us to know. Not every person who's disabled uses their experience of being disabled to help other disabled people. Not every person who's black, oh, we can see that in the world, helps their experience of being black to help other people. Or actually, it's because one of the things that I absolutely believe in is that if you solve the problems for the most oppressed, everybody benefits. And I think that's a really important one around class to look at. What are the issues for working class people in this country? Because we address those and the party as a whole, society as a whole, will benefit.
When a lot of politicians, especially Labour politicians, talk about class, the kind of framing they do is kind of how they're working class. Like I could say, no, I could use my experience of be like, grew up in social housing, um, you know, always kind of been in poverty, kind of that kind of conversation, instead of being like, we kind of have the signaling of class rather than being like talking about kind of the issues that working class people face, and also using that term working class and not working people, whatever. Like we need to have this conversation about about the working class, and kind of how kind of we are, people are working themselves more and more and more, and seeing themselves getting poorer and poorer and poorer. because all of that wealth is being siphoned to kind of the 1% in this country. And now, people are worried about like how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to pay their bills, and we need to be louder on those issues and being like, we have the solutions to, housing. We can insulate homes. So a policy that's good for the environment and also good for people because they have to pay less heating costs. Like we have policies that, working class people care about. We need to be louder on those policies. We need to cut through. We need to make sure that we are saying working class. We need to make sure that we are, we do live in an inherently classist society, and we need to recognize that, and we need to say this is wrong. Everyone should have a good standard of living. We should have a higher minimum wage. We shouldn't have people fighting to get the benefit, like to get the money. Like, I can't hate the word benefits, but like, fight for that money that people need to live. Like, we need to become louder on those issues and making sure that, as the Green Party is a party that will help everyone to kind of live the life they want to live and not work themselves to the bone and have barely anything at the end of that.
I don't know if you're going to discuss this, but part of that for me, I think, is about the emphasis that I know I've been doing, which is around our relationship with unions and trade unions. I don't know if you were going to talk about that, but I think it's really important that though there is still quite a pushback. So how I've found is I've had to make very individual relationships with unions, because there's a sort of pushback that most of them are still affiliated, or many of them are still affiliated with Labour. But others who are more politically attuned are actually very open, especially when I was a councillor, to working with me. And I think it's an area that we do have the Green Party Trade Union Group. And I think it's something that I would really like to see us strengthen and raise the profile of, and do more work with. Though because we're in interesting times in terms of what's happening with unions, and what their power base and how they're being interacted with and how they're interacting with everything that's going on in the world. But I would like us to actually be much more proactive in that relationship, and in supporting unions to be the voice of the working class. And had a whole conversation about what it is to be working class rather than working people. And when you talk about the working class, you're talking about organized working people coming together to benefit them all rather than just the individual working people.
What other issues are important to you?
The issues that I suppose are really important to me are about the sort of bedrock qualities and quality of life that people have, so that they can be able to participate in the world and have their voice heard. So I'm a housing activist. I'm a member of Greater Manchester Tenants Union. I set up their anti-racism committee, and it's, for me, like, what's happening in terms of housing. I would really, really like to see. I think it was to take away housing as a economic sort of the way people make money is one of the vilest things that we have, because it's such an important human right for people to be housed well and to be safe and warm and comfortable in their homes. So that's one of the areas of real passion that I have. The other is, well, I'm an artist, and I think there hasn't been a full understanding of what participating in creative activity and arts can bring to human beings, because it's been very much sidelined as a elite activity. And I think there's a reason for that. That it's like, if you alienate people from the idea of their creative souls, you actually are taking away a huge part of their ability to organize and love each other and contribute. So those are my two other passions.
There's kind of a couple of policies that I am really passionate about in the party personally. which is a drugs policy. I think people being locked up for drug use is completely ridiculous and not how you fight addiction and those problems. So I'm really supportive of all the stuff the drugs policy working group has done on that, and we do have great policies. I think we need to be louder about those policies. And the other kind of policy that I kind of really care about is kind of sex worker rights. Also something the party is kind of a bit shy of talking about, but people shouldn't be criminalized for working, even if it's a job that people find a bit distasteful. We kind of need to be fighting for those marginalized people that have faced so many issues, and kind of we need decriminalization of sex work, which also helps kind of fight sex trafficking and things like that as well, because people are able to come forward, they're able to kind of interact with the police. A lot of secret sex workers are really afraid of coming forwards, even if they're being trafficked. They need to, we need to have a society where, we don't look down on a particular type of work because of, our own possibly moral objections to it. Like it isn't the morally correct position to kind of have have all of this underground, and sex workers should be able to unionize and fight for their rights and be able to cooperate with each other so they can make their industry less harmful. I think in the party as well, we kind of talked about race, we've talked about disability, we've talked about trans people, we've talked about class, but I think one thing about class, I want kind of the party to be, we have liberation groups, we don't have a liberation group for class, and maybe we should do for working class people, and to kind of bring forward those issues that we all face. There's so very broad, not just white working class people, but all working class people, and kind of getting that solidarity and making sure that the party is moving in that direction. And also kind of some other kind of marginalized identities as well. Before this interview, I was in the LGBTIQ plus Greens hustlings for deputy leaders, so just watching it briefly. And there was a question on asexual people. I'm asexual myself, and I'm very disappointed by the lack of knowledge kind of all the candidates had about ace people, of oh yeah, we'll accept asexual people, they shouldn't be discriminated against, but no recognition of the problems asexual people face in society. So me personally, one of the things I'm going to take away from that is I need to talk out more about being asexual and kind of have that more understanding of the party. So kind of I think we kind of we do, the party on as a whole does kind of good on these kind of broad conversations, but there needs to be more on specific issues for specific communities that aren't really talked about as much, and that need to kind of have more of a focus and more awareness in the party and kind of broader society. So I guess that's a lot, but there's a lot of things I'm really interested in. Some of the broad policies as well I'm I'm passionate about, obviously, is against the genocide, which we're quite loud on that already. We joined the EU, a wealth tax, those are also things that I'm really passionate about, but there needs also to be kind of more of these smaller issues that a lot of people face, need to be also talked about and need to be given a platform.
Why do you think we should vote for you, and what will you do if you're elected?
We represent such a breadth of the membership in terms of our age and our diversity of our age and our lived experience, and also the passion that we feel for bringing equality and diversity forefront in the party and supporting people. The things that I hope that we want to focus on are resourcing the special interest groups, the liberation groups, because we feel that's where the strength of the party actually really exists, in members who come together around specific issues to raise that and raise their lived experience and their knowledge around those issues to really sort of be able to impact in the direction of the party. Strengthen how equalities and diversities are forefronted and resourced in the party. So looking at bringing in and supporting a much more collectivized, supported process in terms of raising that, but also asking the question of why we've had this period. Why do we have a current leadership who don't seem to be able to grab this by the horns and really take, because I feel the membership are gagging for it. They want the direction, they want the support, they want the leadership, and I feel like we will really be able to provide that by tackling and being able to speak that truth part, that we will be able to present our arguments very clearly and support the special interest groups and the liberation groups to bring their arguments very clearly to the leadership bodies, to GPEX, to GPRC, and actually begin to shape this. And the other area that we're really keen on is making sure that the diversity of candidates who reach up internally and externally through the party are supported to do that. So that's why I would really like support, is because we want to ensure that everybody gets supported to have a voice in this party, and we want to see a much more diverse section of candidates being pushed forward, successfully winning seats for the Green Party. And if we have that, I think it's the basis from which the Green Party will grow from strength to strength.
I think also one of the things kind of we want to do is kind of form connections and bridges between the liberation groups, so they are working collaboratively. There's a lot of intersectional issues that liberation groups can work on together, um, and kind of have that common cause with each other. And there is also needs to be kind of more understanding against groups as well. There's some thoughts in the party about if one liberation group gets something, it's unfair, or like that someone liberation group's doing better than the others. So or in whatever way it is. So they're getting unfair treatment and stuff, and we don't want that situation. We want all of our liberation groups to be represented, resourced, and kind of be brought together and be able to have these conversations between different communities as well, to make sure that all of the communities are kind of singing from the same hymn sheet when it comes to kind of liberation, and that we have kind of a shared vision of like what the issues we're fighting for, and then it also needs to kind of be also we want to kind of like review the kind of internal policies in the party as well. A lot of how the party functions and how we do things can be quite exclusionary, and we haven't really had a look at like our policies and how like not policies, our procedures and our processes and how they can exclude people and find people at a loss, because a lot of our ways we do things is very much set up by white middle class people. So we need to kind of have a look at kind of all of the kind of details and how people don't feel like they can engage in the party in the way that they want to, and that they can actually use the skills that they have. That's what another thing I want to work on. A lot of like when we send ourselves out of like when local parties send asks out to people of like campaigning and stuff, it's mostly like, we're doing door knocking these days, can you come and help? Are you doing leafleting these days? What we can do what can you help with that? And we're not asking people, what their skills are and what they can bring. A lot of disabled people can't go out and door knock and deliver leaflets, but they have other skills. They might have social media skills, they might have skills writing press releases, developing literature. But if we're not, engaging people and asking people, what can you bring to help with the party, we're not going to get that those skills from those people. We're just going to kind of alienate people from, keep asking them to do something that they're unable to do. So yeah, we need to kind of, as a party, we kind of need to bring people into the party. We need to be able to have those skills in the party, because we have such a diverse range of people. We have such a wonderful membership, and we really need to kind of have people able to be able to, do what they can do for the party, and to get people elected to implement the policies that we need for everyone and the planet. That's kind of what we want to do in the role, and making sure that everyone is involved, everyone is able to push us towards those goals.
So I'd like to do a shout out for young people, the Young Greens. And I think we can see that the party has been reasonably successful in terms of the support it's given, the sort of 50 under 50. No, that's not the right one, 30 under 30. See, young people's different age things for me. But at the same time, it hasn't necessarily addressed the diversity of young Greens. So it's like, let's look at what we're good at and how we can build on that, because we know that we've got some amazing young councillors that have come through that process, but let's build on the diversity of those and the offer that have young people have. And then you've got the other way around, we've got a big age thing. And I think age is a really important thing that isn't holistically addressed in the Green Party. And I'd really like to look at that. And I think that we have that capacity with the two of us. We've got quite a wide age range between us, that I think we can really sort of do that quite sensitively as well.